Imagine one day you wake up and you cannot breathe. Well, many teenagers and young adults are getting caught up in the trend of vaping, or in cooler terms, hitting the juul. According to the Center of Addiction, vaping is defined as the act of inhaling and exhaling an aerosol, often referred to as a vapor, which is produced by an e-cigarette or similar device. In a survey given in 2018, 17.6% of 8th graders, about 33% of 10th graders, and 37% of 12th graders reported vaping substances such as nicotine-flavored liquids, marijuana, and hash oil. The fruity flavors produced by some e-cigarette companies is what lures in young people, even though they lack general knowledge about the specific substance they are smoking. This could be your brother, your sister, or your loved one not knowing that they're damaging their own lungs, not knowing what they're inhaling. Air is the only thing one should inhale, nothing more, nothing less. My name is Anitha Abraham, and today I'm going to talk about the vaping epidemic. The major problem is that in the U.S., e-cigarette manufacturers have engaged in a campaign aimed at teens, which minimizes the dangers associated with vaping. The cause being this lack of research related to health consequences associated with vaping. The solution is to allow for more education, implementing a year-long educational campaign for all students in grade levels 7 through 12, addressing the fact-based health consequences associated with vaping. Ultimately, the speech is to implement education and raise awareness on this rising issue. Now that we've established the working definition of vaping and what it means, let us further elaborate on the problem of vaping. Previous knowledge of vaping utilizes these e-cigarettes seems to not affect the youth negatively. Rather, they still buy such products even to this day. In fact, in 2016, e-cigarettes were the most common product that contained tobacco among U.S. middle and high school students. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, and the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, looked at reasons as to why these students use e-cigarettes. The results from a national youth tobacco survey found that the top 3 reasons why students use e-cigarettes is because a family member or friend uses vapes, 39%. There are a variety of flavors used like mint, candy, etc., 31%, and the belief that e-cigarettes are less harmful than cigarettes and other tobacco products, 17.1%. These young kids have also admitted to having easier access to obtain these e-cigarettes, as well as seeing their favorite celebrities use vapes. In 2017, Surgeon General has reported an increase in vaping due to nicotine addiction, which can harm brain development and alter nerve cell functioning. More research has proven that the use of e-cigarettes increases the likelihood of smoking actual cigarettes within 18 months. According to the article, The Vaping Trend, vaping opens the doors for teens to experiment drugs. In fact, the House passed a ban in early February of 2020, which applies to specific devices, which includes cartridge or pre-filled pod devices, similar to those produced by the popular e-cigarette company Juul. However, there is a loophole to this ban. As stated in the article published by the New York Times, this new policy permits all flavors to continue to be sold in devices that cannot be refilled and are designed to be disposed or after the flavor nicotine dries out. Therefore, students have gone to buy their vapes from a new company called Puff Bar. Upon looking at the website, Puff Bar has all different types of flavors that are attracting the youth. Flavors like cool mint, peach ice, mango, so forth. On their website, it says Puff Bar disposable device comes pre-filled with 5%, 50 milligrams of salt nic, enough to stay satisfied for the whole day. Puff Bars are also cheap, so more teens are buying them. During that same time, the CDC has reported that the majority of patients who developed vaping-related lung diseases have vaped THC, which is a highly inducing chemical in marijuana. However, some did only vape nicotine. Now that we've discussed the federal ban and the major flaw, let us talk about the cause. The known knowledge of effects of vaping are very circumstantial and are not well studied in depth for a rising national crisis. Doctors know that there is some sort of correlation between vaping and lung damage, however, there is not enough funding for further research. This is due to the e-cigarette companies themselves not being able to provide the public with the substances that are in their pods. There is, however, evidence that lung damage is a result in response to excessive vaping. A study from Harvard University uncovered the presence of dangerous lung-destroying chemicals in electronic cigarettes and other vaping devices. In addition, a study from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill revealed that smoking e-cigarettes can trigger immune system responses in the lungs that can contribute to inflammatory lung disease. The black market of e-cigarettes is not helping with the lack of research and mystery surrounding the long-term health effects of vaping. As more e-cigarettes are getting sold in the black market, there are more uncertainty that rises. The way that the black market mimics well-known e-cigarette companies is quite clever. They buy the cartridges from factories in China, and then the manufacturers buy those cartridges and supply them with THC oil and other mixtures, then package them for sale by distributors. The CDC soon got involved when the spur of illnesses within these teens that did vape began to increase. A revelation was made as of January 2020. The CDC said that those illnesses and injuries appear to be entirely linked to marijuana vapes and indeed not nicotine e-cigarettes. Most of these vapes were found to be purchased on the black market. The evidence from back in January enabled the CDC to warn people about the evidence against black market cannabis vapes. And to stay protected, it is recommended that people avoid any sort of e-cigarette and vaping products. However, this has failed to uncover any further truth and has done very little on its impact to decrease the new drug on wars on e-cigarettes. Once again, U.S. lawmakers are using prohibition rather than implementing safety regulations to ensure that consumers purchase these products legally. However, over time, a larger black market will only arise, including both marijuana and nicotine in e-cigarettes. Thus, this will only guarantee future outbreaks, and the problems will simply be more widespread and frequent. Now that we have talked about the lack of research within the e-cigarette industry, let us transition to the solution. In middle and high school, we had health courses that provided students with necessary information they needed for protection about different types of drugs, etc. If there were programs like the ones mentioned in schools, all of this would aid in fighting this epidemic. Young adults simply do not understand the severity of these impacts. For the students already addicted, schools should provide counseling and help them get rid of their addiction. The students dealing with this issue can also text Ditch Juul to 88709 and seek help. Schools should have their own text code so that students dealing with vaping issues can remain anonymous. Had the government launched programs like this in every school in America, this issue would not be as severe. Hence why a call to action is definitely instilling a program that talks about the impacts of vaping nicotine, THC, and even worse. When schools tell their students lies and essentially misinformation about vaping, making outrageous allegations, especially to 8th graders, for example, that is not going to be effective either. For example, a Florida physician, Lana Gordon, constantly writes inflated lies about vaping-related lung devices. Gordon emphasizes that vaping and e-cigarette devices result in lung damage and death. While this may be true, there's no solid evidence with legal nicotine products. The pseudoscientific anti-vaping propaganda from government agencies like the FDA might work into scaring students from e-cigarettes, but excessive lying about the unknown effects of e-cigarettes can potentially lead to dangerous misinformation. In the case of Gordon, if everything she says is true, the 8th grade students might go to smoke actual cigarettes, which is even worse. For students who have common sense, they know not to listen to these false accusations from Gordon, thus allowing them not to believe in authority, which defeats the entire purpose. It is more effective if schools instill these programs when the truth is shared to students so that they can understand the actual cons to vaping from e-cigarettes. Now that we have established the problem, the cause, and the solution of vaping, let's finally conclude with some final remarks on this issue. The vaping fad will not be extinguished in one day. Rather, it will take a lot of effort in order for this ordeal to finally be over. By acquiring more knowledge on this topic, more people will push scientists and researchers for more answers. Researchers need to obtain more case studies and need to get more information from big e-cigarette companies to test their chemicals. This is to see their long-term effects rather than wait for teens to die and then after the fact to uncover their death as something related to vaping. The government needs to be pressed to start these educational programs to benefit the youth and future generations to come. If all of these conditions are met, then only will this fad be expired. Together, we can fight this problem and save lives. Now you know what to say next time someone asks you, mind if I vape?